Hey guys, so it's the final chapter and mixing and mastering, that's what I do. We're going to show you how to mix and master the track now. So we're going to show you how I mixed and mastered Circumference, how we got it fat and warm. We're not looking at specifically going for the latest protocols on the store level. We're looking to do that jungle sound where we used to drive it on that. We used to drive it to tape. We used to get that sort of clipping sound, the big sort of, the fat analog sound through the mixing discs, hum and distortion and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to show you that within Cubase 12 using only our stock plugins to do this as well. So coming up in this chapter, mixing and mastering, jungle mixing and mastering. Let's go. So here we are, mixing and mastering and arrange a track. We're going to look at that as well. If you missed the other two chapters, you can go and check them again if you've just landed on this one. We looked at construction of the beats and layering the beats. Then we looked at bass processing and mixing them and layering them and getting them fat. We're going for the hardware sound. We're going for the jungle sound. This is my jungle track Circumference. Came out over 20 or 23 years ago on New Vibe Recordings. I'm going to briefly play the track one more time so you get an idea of how it all works. And then we're going to go into the mixing stage of it, and we're going to show you the arranging track and how you can get a quick arrangement down. And then we're going to look at something really cool, like maybe throwing a little bit of the time stretch just to get the 950 in this picture. We've had it in the other two versions as well, the other two chapters. We may as well feature it in the last one as well, just for flavour, because it was used on this track originally. And we are replicating the 90s in Cubase 12 Pro. Okay, let's go. So here's the track so far. So you get the idea. If you didn't check the first chapter, we did all the breaks. We shown how I would replicate it on a mixing desk, on an analog mixing desk. We used to separate all the breaks together. So as far as mixing the elements concerned, we went through all the channels in the first chapter so we could see what we could take away. We looked at processing, adding harmonics and distortion, we looked at FX modulator, all that kind of stuff. So I won't revisit that. So we're all the way up to the breaks. We also looked at the bass as well. So we did a 950 resampling and stuff like that, and showing how we can use stuff like quadrifuzz to add them sort of harmonics and distortion and fatness to the sub. So they all kind of mix these channels already. So the mixing element's kind of done. So what I would say is, for instance, like your extras, so your sounds, your rewinds, your sweeps, your drops, your effects, your lasers, all that kind of extra stuff, I would say they can become quite consuming. You go quite deep, almost too deep, mixing the little bits of the stuff and that in there. And because you might only have a laser in the beginning and a drop and maybe not even coming later on, or you might have multiple different effects and spot effect sounds dotted throughout the track, it can become a bit of a nightmare going backwards and forwards, mixing them and getting the levels right. So what I would say is always put them in a group. It's a really good mixing tip. Put them in a group and then they can be controlled. So this is probably the more powerful thing about modern software, is we can have as many effects as we want and all that kind of stuff with the processing, but we can also group loads of channels together. One virtual fader, easily controllable. So in Cubase, I will say from the drop, from here we have that kind of 70s sort of crime sound. From the drop, I'm just going to press shift on the PC to go all the way down to the crash and stab. That's it, all channels selected, right click, add track. I'm going to group channels to selected channels. Just click on that and I can just call it FX and extras. Add the track. I'm going to create them inside the folder. Stereo configuration, add track, done. So if I go to my group tracks at the bottom here, I can open them up and then you can see our FX and extras. If I solo it, you can see they've all been categorized in that channel. And that just means now, for instance, when I have all the effects running, so let's zoom in our arrangement a bit, close it up a bit. So in our arrangement here, running throughout the track, you can hear my little effects come in. There's like a little rewind. There's a stab there as well. You can see here, because I've already at the mixing stage, I've already took out a lot of the stuff here. Oh, apart from that little bass sound, but that's cool because it's supplementing the sub bass a little bit. But it means the majority of stuff can come down. So it means that, for instance, you can start maybe on here, on our low cut filters, I can choose a slope, I will say 36 dB, and I can just start taking stuff down, not too critically, because there is a sub in there, a little extra bass sub, and I kind of don't want it clashing with the main sub, but I also want it to be heard a little bit, so I'm not going to go too mad, but so you can definitely take out this range here, just for security, just so that nothing else comes in, but also because we have other sounds going in and stuff like that, we can actually bus them together. So I can say, give me a compressor. We have tons in Cubase. I'm going to use the vintage compressor. So the vintage compressor is great for obviously compressing, but you get that kind of vintage sound and punch, and you want the sounds to have attack as they're coming in and sweeping in and stuff, and not get lost in the mix too much. So a faster attack, so we get them transients, open it up a bit more. Ratio, you can do about 2, and we'll have punch mode on, and then we'll leave the output exactly where it is, and we're just going to drive into the output just to get a bit of flavour. And nothing too mad. And you can see here, that's not too bad, I'll take that. So we're looking at the gain reduction, that's not too bad. And then if we look on our analyzer, so we can see like the sounds here, for instance. If I come over here to the stab, and this little reverse, there, look, there, a little bit there. And if we come across, we can see that we're missing a lot of the highs here. So what I can do is I can change the curve. I can maybe give it a parametric 2, for instance, and just boost up this sort of high region. We can get away with that because it's not really there. Or we can just go back to our high shelf 2, and we can just bring up the high shelf there as well, just to add more brightness to the sounds, so they're not too murky underneath the mix. Because remember, there's a lot of analog type breaks running with a darker sound, and this will just add more sort of lightness to, for instance, in chapter 1 we looked at adding general MIDI, that sort of natural hi-hats and bongos. This will supplement that a little bit as well in the mix. You can see it's not really there. So all the sounds, and there's quite a lot of highs that I can put it back in there, and I'm going up to about 5 dB, and that's quite high, but it just works now. So I'm really happy with that, and that's it really for the mixing process, because obviously we mixed in the beginning the beats, we mixed the bass already, we've cut even not boost, or should I say we've cut not boost to take away unnecessary frequencies that are not needed. In a break like this, for instance, like the Congo break, you can see it took off some of the highs because it's quite a sharp toppy break. That won't clash with anything. Took out the low end because it's obviously going to clash with subs, and that would be most of the breaks, to be honest, because in them days it was more about the actual raw subs, as we spoke about earlier, and the breaks, as opposed to like kicks and snares. It's more break beats with the sub. That's the more sort of jungle element and jungle sound. And that's it. So that's pretty much mixed now. So obviously it's going into a mastering chain, which we're going to look at shortly. The mastering chain literally is replicating my hardware chain. So we'll speak about that in a second. But now what about if I wanted to do some arranging? And obviously this is just like maybe just building stage and it's not quite arranged. What if I wanted to arrange it? So really cool thing in Cubase, which is I think is pretty invaluable, is the arranger track. So to open an arranger track, right click. We want to add an arranger, obviously. There's our arranger track. It's not activated yet because we don't need to right now. But what we can do is we can get the pencil tool, and then we can choose to draw in the sections. I'm going to go on bar mode, for instance, and we can choose to draw in the sections where we want. So A is the intro, B is that little drop section, then we have the actual drop. So let's bring it back a bit there. Then we have the actual drop up to there. Then I might want, for instance, maybe this sort of second part drop that comes in here, and then maybe the rollout. So I'll have the rollout where it sort of tails off right to the very end here, something like that. So that's a rollout. So this is just for demonstration purposes. Obviously, I might go really deep into all the different intricacies of the arrangement and where I want things, but predominantly intro, drop, first drop, maybe second drop, maybe roll out, and that's what I've done here. So A, B, C, D there, and E for the rollout. Okay, so you can see here on the left-hand side in the inspector, we have the arranger events. Now I can just open E, and I can see the full arranger window. Now this is great to be able to get a full snapshot, and it's resizable as well, so you can see exactly what you're doing. And then from here, I can actually choose to, for instance, it's probably a good idea to rename them actually. And that's it, and there's all my sections. Go back to our arranger chain, and you can see all the sections now, and it's just a case of me going, okay, intro, drop, I might want a second drop now, and then I might want roll out, or I might want to leave out parts entirely, and it's really great. I can just choose how much I want to repeat it by, and here's my arrangement. So, for instance, on this, because it's a shorter track, the original track was like 6 minutes, so I wasn't going to do a 6 minute full demo, so I have trimmed a little bit out of the intro from the original track, and that's all really. I thought I was adding a couple of little slight little edits, but this is pretty much a track from that I made in the 90s, replicated in Cubase 12, obviously for this demo to show you that you can do that and have that hardware sound. So there's a couple of edits in the arrangement, but not many at all, like literally in the drop there. This is longer, and the intro's a bit longer. So what I can do, for instance, is, okay, let's make it longer. So this is like, this can be the original edit, for instance. So I'm going to repeat it, not 22 times, obviously, because we will be here all day and night. I'm going to repeat it 2 times. And the main drop, where it comes in, there, with that sort of 70s sound, that needs to be opened a bit more as well. So that's going to be twice. So it's a case of then activating the arranger mode. And then if I press play, I can audition real-time the parts that I've chosen, the sections that are in this arranger. So intro first, obviously. Second drop. Roll out. So that could actually work as a sort of radio edit, you know, like a sort of shortened maybe Reels for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram kind of short version, like a trailer type thing. Literally just jumps into the drop, start maybe with one intro, drop, then roll out, and you get like a little shorter edit. So for that, it's perfect. So I can say intro, play twice, drop, play twice, and then go straight into the rollout by literally just dragging the rollout first. So then I can play it back, and it sounds like this. We'll take it from the drop so we don't have to listen to the intro again and again. And you can see it skipping around, and where it needs to drop, it's absolutely perfect for getting quick ideas down. We can have multiple chains within the chain. We can flatten the chain. So real time, if I press flatten, it will actually flatten the arrangement. You can see there, excellent. I can then have it literally laid out in a certain way. So you can see the drop there, straight into the rollout. There's my arrangement. So we can actually quickly get down ideas and quickly get arrangements down. Now I can choose to, if I go to the options, I can choose to flatten it to a new project or a current project. I can make the real event copies, I can keep the arranger track. So it's fully customizable, and obviously I can of course then create new chains. So I can keep adding loads of different chains. So radio edit, epic edit, Instagram edit, TikTok edit, Reels edit, epic edit. And again, like everything in Cubase, it goes much deeper. So go on our channel, YouTube channel, and you can see a lot more about the arranger track. But for getting quick ideas down, it's an amazing tool for rearranging, even remixing. You can actually just do things on the fly, get a quick idea, change the arrangement around, different types of edits, flatten it real time to see it. If you want to just get the arrangement down quickly and see it visually, how it all maps out, really easy. Flatten chain and job done. Okay, so let's turn off the arranger track for now and keep it as it was, so to speak. And now we're going to go on to mastering. But before we go on to mastering, quickly want to show you something. At the end of this track here, we have this vocal. So this vocal here, this hey hey vocal, let's zoom in a bit more to see what I'm talking about. This vocal here. Hey, 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 hey. Now I've actually stretched that. Right at the end, there's a little time stretch version of it. Right at the bottom here, this one here. Hey, hey. So that's just to give it a bit of flavour. This was the 950 time stretch. So quickly, just to show you this as a little cool little bit nugget of information, the S950 has a really great time stretch. I used to stretch a lot of like sort of bullet stretches and crashes and little vocals like that. Hey, so it had a real nice sound, like a metallic kind of stretch sound. So we can kind of do that in Cubase. Let's go to our Hey vocal. I'm gonna solo it. Now that's raw. There was an effect on it, but for this demo, let's just take it off and leave it as it is. So, for example, this is the sample in the 950. So this is the Akai S950. For those that don't know, one of the classic jungle samplers. Great for stretching. Has a great flavour, great knock on the beats with the converters when you sample into it. It's only 12-bit as far as I know. It's got a lo-fi kind of sound. We can replicate it if you check the other chapters in this series. We actually shown how to make that bass 950-esque and the beats like that as well, using the vintage mode in Groove Agent SC and in Sample Track. And just to show you quickly on that time search on the sample that I used, that was a 950. This is how we get that kind of sound. And all we did was, I went to edit sample on the 950. If you go to page 14, for those who still have a 950, it's always hard, you've got to remember the numbers on the tabbing. But there's a menu here to show you all the stuff as well, which is really cool, really helpful. Quite like that. Anyway, 14, stretch. I'm stretching at 999%, which is an awful lot, but that's what we did. And that's what I did, particularly. D time is 500. D time will determine how much is put back together to give it a non-metallic sound, so it can work in reverse. But for this one, I think 500 was a nice happy medium for this example to show, and it sounds quite pleasant as well. So there's the hey. Now, simple case of audio processes, time stretch. We're going to create a new version. So when you see this dialogue, new version, that's what you want, because then it can only apply to the edited event. It can get a bit chaotic if you have different events, and this makes it a lot easier. New version. So new version, I'm going to go to our Elastic time stretch algorithm. I'm going to choose pitch actually. So the Elastic Pro pitch algorithm, and we're going to go to about a stretch of about 500. So that's quite a lot. Obviously we can go up to nearly 1,000, but we're going to keep it at about 500. So I'm going to go 500. We're not going to look at stuff like BPM or seconds because we're doing a creative time stretch, so it doesn't have to fit within specific time frames and be in time and all that kind of stuff. We're going for the effect as opposed to the timing. That's why we're looking at 500%, and we're going to do even more to that as well. So there we go, 500%. And with being direct offline processing, which is an amazing feature, by the way, we can get to audition, what it might look like before we go in and commit. So I can say audition. And I like that. So there's a few options here. I can say, okay, let's roll with that. And I can keep stretching and stretching, but 500 is a good base to build from. So if you listen to the 950 one here, and here's the Cubase. So it's getting there, it's slowly getting there. Now what I can do here is, like we've shown in the earlier versions, press R to render it. Again, it's customizable what buttons you use that for, but this is our rendering. So we can actually choose to render to audio. We can choose to render the audio. So this sound now is ready to go. I can put it in a folder. There's my time stretched hey vocal. So there's the vocal. So now what I can do is I can say, okay, give me a sampler. Now to go another level deeper, so we're hitting the sort of Akai metallic sort of character type time stretch. We can then say, okay, audio warp quality. I'm going to take it to best mode. So the algorithm goes down a little bit, not as high quality, and then I go to audio warp mode, and then I'm going to choose solo mode. And then with solo mode, then I can really go in. I can tweak the formant. So Akai, sampler track, Akai, sampler track. So you see we're getting there. And obviously then the powerful thing about having it all in software, in the software realm, is means you can just go, you can go crazy with it now. And it's great. You can get that kind of matrix kind of stretch going on like this. I like to keep the formant a little bit under 10, to be honest. And it's up to you to experiment with that, you know? Right, so let's get back to mixing and mastering. Finally, our mastering chain. is our mix console. I'm going to scroll right across to our stereo output, which is our mastering chain, and there's our mastering chain. So in my other videos, you've seen like I was doing a more precise mastering chain for streaming protocols for stores and stuff like that. Because this is more like a jungle mastering chain, and we're replicating the jungle sound from the 90s, and we're going for that 90s vibe, a lot of stuff was pushed, heavily pushed. We drove the channels on the mixing desk, we drove to tape, that tape for instance, to give it that sound, really crushed up sound. This personally is roughly kind of the chain that I had. So frequency EQ that replicated an EQ that I had. Compressor, I had a basic compressor, which always is the first in my rack, which I've always stuck with that kind of protocol. Imager, didn't really have that obviously, but on the desk you could have some width going on. Multiband envelope shaper, that was the dynamics processor that I had. Vintage compressor, I had one of those. And then we had a limiter. I think I had an Alesis one. The compressor I had was a Drama one, that's what I had, so I don't have it anymore, but that's what I use mostly. And then we've got supervision here to just see what's going on in our whole mix and master. And that's it really. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things in the chain, so it's not heavily populated at all, and some things are not doing that much in the mix. They're literally there just to control things. So let's go through the process. First things first is the compressor. Let's go from the drop. Always, if you're mastering, take your stuff from the highest part of the track. It's pointless starting to do a mix and master and analyze it and do a chain from the quietest sections of the track. That's not going to be really helpful. So pick like your epic drop, your epic part of the track where all the things are really buzzing in and working together. It just makes things a lot easier to work backwards from. Okay, so let's disable it. Here is the chain without. Here is circumference without the chain. And here it is with the chain. A quick with and without. So there you go. So nothing on our channel strip. There is some light EQ there just to push up some of the frequencies of the break, for instance, that pickup break that's running, it's got like a ringing high mid, bringing some of that up, and then obviously some of the sheen as well. So there's not much going on there. There's only like 1.6 dB, but the majority of the heavy lifting is here. So in the compressor, you can see it working. Really low gain reduction. It literally is just taking off the tops. Most sort of fast percussive kind of drum bass like 170, 165, 180, all that kind of stuff. Fast attack, slower release. So you want the transients to pick up and then to release to give it some room to breathe as well. Obviously each type of genre of music is different, how you would choose your compression type. The ratio is really low because I don't want it doing too much because I did a lot of character building in the channels. So of course if there was the break was really powerful and too unruly and the peaks of the snares were just bashing through too much, I would put a higher ratio up to control that from the off. That's why I always say from the beginning, it's not a golden rule for everyone, but a compressor to control any sort of unruly elements and peaks that are coming through. And of course your threshold is the ceiling about which you're going to dictate it by your ratio and rate of compression. So really light. There isn't much going on with the snares in this one, so it's more breaky, so it's doing a good job there, but it's just there for more like a safety measure, just to be transparent and give me a good starting point to build from. Next going into that, we've got frequency EQ. If you watch the other videos and the other episodes, you know I have a mad love for this EQ, frequency EQ too. It's brilliant EQ. You've got an analyzer built in. We've got dynamic compression in there as well now. It can sidechain, cut and boost at extreme values. I love this EQ. I like the precision of frequency EQ, the fact that we can actually do really surgical things in there. The thing that I love in here is the fact that, for instance, the left and right, so between 5 and 10 is your sheen, your rides, your hi-hat, the aim and break, the big bird break, the Congo break, the percussion, that sizzle and sheen and energy and sugar, that we can bring that up a bit more. So what I've done with frequency EQ, which is amazing, you can actually say, for instance, on node 7, I can separate node 7, so between 5 and 10, I can separate the left and the right nodes. So I can actually separate that frequency band. And that means, for instance, I can, with it, I turn the monitor button on, I can auto listen. And hear left or right. And that's great because that means I can then just in that frequency range, without affecting the rest of the program material, just open up that little section there. And it's great if you've been able to just have that little nice bit of width in that region and just open up the hats a bit more. And the hats are quite general MIDI, so they're quite wide anyway, but it adds a bit more. Like the Congo break is quite mono sort of sounding, and this gives them tops a little bit more width as well that are in that break, and some of the pickup breaks as well. So you get that kind of nice bit of energy and width between 5 and 10k, which is always a good region with breakbeat, you know, jungle, drum and bass type stuff as well. This is a really good region to work with in. So let's go into frequency EQ. Then let's go into the imager. One of our latest plugins. I absolutely love this plugin. Again, from about 200, well, and again, from about 150, I've opened up the width a bit more as well. So there's a lot of spatial energy going on. So that goes into a multiband envelope shaper, which I absolutely love. Again, check my other video on this, but this is great for actually opening up the dynamics within the tracks. So this is a great plugin. Absolutely love this plugin. If you checked in the first chapter, you can see what you can do to the breaks. But for a mastering phase, it's brilliant because I can just turn off certain frequency ranges and bands what I need to use or see, and then I can just control them and solely focus on them. So for instance, 200, where a lot of the low mid is in there, like the pickups, the energy of the breaks, that sort of punch, around 200 onwards, that's where you get that in breaks, drum and bass, all that kind of stuff, jungle. I can punch that up a bit more. It's great here for the high mid as well, so you get real sort of punch and energy cutting through, real nice transient punching, with and without. Let's have a listen. So you get the idea. It's really, oh, I love this plugin. I absolutely love this plugin. Me and Dom go crazy with this plugin. I absolutely love it. So it's great for being able to put that into the track. So for instance, if the dynamics were too unruly, if the dynamics were too hard, too harsh, the drums are bashing in too much, we could actually use it in reverse and soften the dynamics in the regions that we choose. So it's really, really a really great plugin. Again, like all plugins in Cubase land, you can overdo it. So be careful with that. So there you go, it's in the middle of the chain. Then we're going into the vintage compressor, which we explained before. Low ratio, punch mode on. We're not really messing around with the output and the input too much, but you can see exactly what it's doing. So you see the compressor there is doing quite a lot, and that's good because when I take it off, it's distorting and driving too much. So the compressor here, I find this one in Cubase, the vintage compressor Mark II, is a really great compressor for adding character, but also controlling as well. So it can control really, really well. And the punch mode is great. You get a real nice punch and fatness out of it. And it's just great anywhere in the chain. I would always say post fader for this kind of one, but if you want to start with it, that's also good. Finally, we've got into Razor. This is great for limiting. So rather than the brick wall limiter or the standard limiter or the channel strip limiter that we have in Cubase, this has got a more targeted feature set. So if you look at the modes, the release modes, we have manual, auto, the two restricted and the aggressive. So for this one, you want aggressive. So aggressive is really going to go in, make things loud, make things crunchier. You can drive right into it. And of course, the real added bonus and security of it being a limiter means you can control clipping. And that's what we don't want to do in the box or any kind of digital realm is clip. Analog realm, we can get away with loads of stuff, loads more headroom, all that kind of stuff. But in the digital realm, we don't want to be going over the clipping range. We don't want to go into digital distortion and all that kind of thing. So this is replicating kind of what I did. I had a different type of limiter back then, doing this kind of job, and then it went to adapt tape. So this is giving me that kind of sound. It's quite similar to the original in that sound context, and that's all we're doing. Literally just going onto the default mode and putting on aggressive mode. We're going to leave everything else the same, and then we can choose to control the input gain and the ceiling. I've got the ceiling at -0, and I have the gain at 0.9, so it's not even 1 dB, and that gives me enough loudness, but also, if you look at here on the right-hand side, it's not going over. And that's what you want. It's giving you a sound, but it's also limiting, and this is the good one for this. Obviously, the brick wall limiter would do different things. The standard limiter would also do different things, but this one here, with the aggressive mode, it's kind of made for this kind of music. Drum bass, breakbeat, hardcore, jungle. You know, drum and bass, it's that kind of vibe, and this is what the aggressive mode gives you, and I like it. And obviously you can see what you're doing as well. So it's great, it gives you a sound, and of course, with us looking at a different type of mastering, for jungle mastering, we're going for a sort of loudness, and this is a master that's probably more sort of club-centric, rave, car test, playing out, you know, outside of the digital store realm. So you're getting that kind of sound. But obviously, if I'm looking at getting this out in the stores, the digital stores, I'm covered. It's not clipping. I can then open supervision, and I can really assess then what needs to be done. I can see my levels. I can see the peaks, obviously the bass bashing right through there. I get to see the waveform, you see it's quite crushed, but we're going for this sound. So although it's crushed, it doesn't sound like it's crushed and distorting, and it doesn't sound overpowering, and it doesn't sound, you know, it's got like a kind of sound to it because we've added dynamics with the multiband envelope shaper to make sure things push through. And a lot of that sort of loudness and blocky that stuff that you can see within there is a sub bass. Sub bass is quite heavy, jungle sound. A lot of it was sub, which we just explained in chapter 2. Heavy bass, we'll go for heavy sub bass over breaks. Obviously, if I took the bass off, that would open up a bit more dynamically, that waveform. And of course, if we're going for a store master, we have an amazing window here which we can open up, which we can then target our LUFS, loudness units full scale, or our LUFS scaling. You can check the latest stores like Beatport, Spotify, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. You can see the latest LUFS that they want to target for your loudness. And then, of course, with this window, it's great to be able to actually double-click, open it up, and then I can see my targeted LUFS. I can set my own reference point, and then I can look to go, okay, I'm going to look at my I, which is my integrated loudness. I can see 7.4, which is quite loud. But then I can dictate it to taste. I can say, okay, that might be too loud, and I can dictate it by the fader. So let's run that. I can reset. So I can reset it now, and we're heading towards the sort of realms that are acceptable for the store masters. But again, we're not doing that type of store master. We're doing like a, let's call this one a club master. You know, it can be club, rave, festival, car, all that kind of stuff, playing outside of the stores, and that's where we can actually use to drive it a bit more, because that's the kind of sound that this track came out on vinyl. It was played for that sort of it was played for that kind of environment, and that's what we did. So let's just get the fader back up and keep it 90s. So there you go, everyone. That was creating a jungle track in Cubase 12 Pro, one of my track circumference, showing you how to put it all together. So hopefully you've learned some nuggets and picked up some cool tips and tricks on creating jungle break beats, processing them, sub bass, creating a sub bass from scratch, mixing and mastering the track, and getting that, replicating that old hardware sound in Cubase 12 Pro with our plugins and instruments. Also, I hope you learned a bit more about the Akai S950, because it's kind of like a mystical unit, and hopefully you can see now that Cubase 12 Pro can do the same sort of stuff as the Akai S950, obviously in the box. So they're not too far away, and hopefully that you've learned a bit more about the sound that you can get, because jungle was also dictated by the sound of things. So until next time, happy beat making, happy jungle making, happy sub bass making, and I'll catch you at the next one. Peace.